what you have to realize is that this situates the meeting of the Lord, which is 40 days after, this situates the meeting of the Lord, or Candlemas, as being halfway between the winter solstice and the spring equinox.
Nice, yeah.
So to me, this sort of reveals, or sort of brings out, one of the most important facets of universal history. Because one of the most important elements of universal history is understanding the way that the Christian story maps onto and it fulfills the sort of old agricultural cycle of the year, which is present. It's not just pagan, it's present in both paganism and Judaism. Both paganism and Judaism have this agricultural cycle that, by the way, predates the law of Moses. When God starts telling the children of Israel, here are the feasts of the agricultural cycle, that wasn't the first time that they'd ever heard of them or celebrated them, right? He's just telling them, here's how you celebrate these in a way that shows that you're my people, right? But everyone basically has these feasts, and more or less, with certain variations, pretty much every culture in the world that lives within the same kind of climate and climate cycle has the feast right around the same points in time. Okay. So what universal history does, one thing that we've talked about is the way that universal history shows how a group of people try to tie themselves into the Christian and the Roman story, right? But another thing that universal history does, that's kind of part of this in this broader, expansive way that I'm using the term, is it shows how does my daily life tie into that story? And so sometimes people will make a big deal about the fact that, for instance, in like Celtic paganism, they had these sort of quarters of the year, and these were the days that fell exactly between each solstice and equinox, right? So there's one on this date, right? In Ireland, it was celebrated on February the 1st, which happens to also be the feast day of St. Bridget of Kildare, who's actually the patron saint of my new daughter. So there you go. It's all connected. And so people will make a big deal about this, and they'll be like, oh, this is just like, see, it's just a Christianizing of this older pagan thing. And again, to that, I have to say, one, I don't care. Like, if you guys keep complaining, we'll baptize Shark Week. Like, I'm sure you've seen that meme. It's like, listen, if you guys keep complaining about this stuff, we're going to make Shark Week a Christian holiday. Like,
that's right.
Have to deal with it. But I mean, in another sense, you have to realize that this is the way that things work, right? This is the way that reality manifests, and this is the way that we know each other and the world that we live in, and it's the way that we know God, right? Is the way that these things manifest themselves in time, and the recurring cycles of the seasons, which were made by God, right? And so it's kind of like preposterous to think, and this is why I get heartburn from these people who are like, oh, well, this, a long time ago when I was a pastor of a church, there was a big fracas because we had a Christmas tree up in like the foyer, which is what Baptists call the narthex,
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh, well, like that's a pagan holiday. And they sent me like this DVD series, you got to take the Christmas tree down because it's a pagan holiday, right? I know you know what I'm talking about, right? But the reason that stuff gives me heartburn is because it's like, you think God doesn't own the days of the year? Like, he made the year, he made the agricultural cycle, he made the solstices and the equinox, like he made these things. And so why would he not, when he manifests himself in the world, right? When he becomes incarnate taking on human nature in this full, complete, total way. But he also like becomes incarnate at a particular point in time, at a particular place in history. But what the whole sort of Christian year shows is the way in which that particularity, you could say again, like the glory of the people Israel, becomes a light to the nations, right? And so Christ doesn't just fill up the 33 years that he's walking around on planet Earth, but actually fills up all of time with himself, right? So there's no other way that this stuff could manifest, right? This is a feature, it's not a bug.
Exactly.
Right? in understanding the relationship of the times of the year to the life of Christ via the Christian liturgical year is vital. It's absolutely vital to the reading of medieval literature. Just to take as a for instance, Arthurian literature. Every great Arthurian story happens at a particular Christian feast day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's Pentecost. Sometimes it's Christmas. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight happens on the feast, not of Christmas, one of my many, I mean, it happens during Christmas tide, but doesn't happen on Christmas Day, which is one of my many beefs with a recent film.
Yeah.
It happens on the feast of the circumcision of the Lord, which was very popular in England at the time that that poem was written.
Yeah, and also it's like, if you cut something, a monster in two, and you don't understand that there's a relationship between the circumcision and that, and it's like you're missing out on some of the story of what's going on.
And I don't want to sound impious about this, okay? But first of all, you have to understand in the Middle Ages, people thought this was a pretty good joke, right? There's a beheading, it happens on the feast of the circumcision of the Lord. Like people were aware, right? But also, like, if you don't understand that story begins on the feast of the circumcision, you won't actually understand anything about the story, right? Which is like what to do with the remainder. Right?
Exactly.
That's what the whole story is about.
That's what the whole story is about. I mean, it's about, like the sash and everything is always about, it's always about that. It's anyways.
And so if you don't understand this stuff, then you won't be able to read medieval literature.